الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Hi and welcome to Worlds Apart, a program that is committed to speaking the truth in love. I'm your host, Moussa Ghazal, and today we have with us Pastor Moussa, who will be speaking to us about ideologies that are worlds apart. Welcome to the show, Pastor.
Thank you, Warren. It's good to be here again.
It's a pleasure to have you. I think we're going to be able to get into it this time and speak about those subjects which I believe both Muslims and Christians would be interested to listen to and to be able to be challenged by as well.
Yes.
So today what we would like to talk about is what it is that God expects from us. And if I could pose that question to you, what is it that God expects from us?
Well, I guess whatever it is, He's revealed to us in the Bible. So we don't have to kind of ask different people or whatever. We turn to the Scriptures in order to find the answer to that question. And I guess Muslims would do the similar thing. They would turn to the Quran in order to find out what it is that God wants from us, what it is that God is like.
So in essence, what we're saying is that God has revealed Himself. So He's done that for us, but we need to check out what it is that He has revealed. That's
right, yes. So we need to make sure that if we say anything about God, that it's confirmed in the Scriptures. That it needs to agree with what the Scriptures actually have to say. In fact, that's the way it's always been. Even the prophets themselves were subject to that kind of evaluation.
Okay, so we said that God will reveal Himself to us, but then how do we now compare what someone says with the truth of God, whatever that might be?
Well, the way that we do it is by comparing what they say with what has been said before in the Scriptures. Even a prophet needed to have that kind of test done for them. So they would come along, they would say something, and the way that people would accept them or reject them was whether it confirmed what had gone previously. In fact, the Quran itself speaks about such things when it refers to the fact that the revelation that was given by Muhammad in the Quran was actually confirming all that came before it. So in Surah 6, Ayah 92, for example, it says, "And this book, the Quran, which we have sent down, bringing blessings, and confirming the revelations which came before it." So it becomes very clear, according to the Quran itself, that it's a confirmation. In other words, it agrees with all that came before it. And in particular, the Quran refers to it being confirmed by the Old Testament, that is the Torah of Moses, and the Gospel or the Injil of Jesus. So again, in Surah 3 and Ayah 3, it says, "It is He who sent down to thee, step by step, in truth, the book," the Quran that is, "confirming what went before it. And He sent down the law of Moses and the gospel of Jesus before this as a guide to men. And He sent down the criterion of judgment between right and wrong."
So by the Scriptures you mean both the Quranic text and also the biblical, or you're referring here to the biblical portion?
Both the Quran and the Bible. Both criteria is used for both. In fact, the Quran makes the same point about the Gospel, the Injil of Jesus, when it says in Surah 5, Ayah 46, "And in the footsteps we sent Jesus, the Son of Mary, confirming the law that had become before Him."
Okay.
And so the Gospel is, or the Injil of Jesus, is a confirmation of the Torah before Him. And that's an important principle that we find not just in the Quran but also in the Bible as well. Jesus Himself says when He comes in the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 5 verse 17, "Don't think that I've come to abolish the law and the prophets. I've not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And Jesus also makes this astounding statement in John chapter 10, verse 35. The scripture cannot be broken, meaning that it's impossible that God's written word could be wrong or invalidated in some way.
And it kind of makes sense, because if it's the same God and there's only one God, and I know that Muslims believe that,
That's right.
then surely there would be revelations, or a revelation through the text all through the ages.
That's right. We believe there's only one God. The Muslims believe that. We believe there's only one truth, therefore, because there's only one God. And God doesn't change. So by definition, a latter prophet isn't going to come along and say something radically different and contradictory to what's come before him. And in fact, all of them say, go back and have a look, and you'll see that what I'm saying lines up, matches up with what goes before it.
Now, there are some Christians that might be listening to you, and you've read a couple of passages. So those passages are from the Quran. You mentioned surah and ayah. What is that?
Well, the Quran is made up of 114 surahs or chapters, and each of those is divided into various verses or ayats. And so the way that we refer to it is by quoting the surah number and then the verse number.
And obviously you're reading from a particular translation?
Yusuf Ali's translation of the Quran. Yeah, there are a few different versions that we could go for, but we've chosen Yusuf Ali because that's the one that most Muslims prefer.
So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to lay this foundation and say that there is a principle that is in Scripture, and that principle is that what has already been written needs to be able to be confirmed by that which comes?
That's exactly it. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And what I'm saying is, in fact, when I was reading through the Quran, is that the Quran itself challenged me to evaluate what the Quran had to say by going back to the Bible.
Sorry, have you made a mistake there? The Quran or the Bible?
The Quran, what the Quran itself had to say.
You're using the Quran
now
to be able to prove or disprove what the Quranic text says?
Yeah, well, the Quran itself challenges Christians. So, if you're a Christian, you read the Quran, you come across Surah 5, Ayah 47, and it says, let the people of the gospel, that's Christians, judge by what Allah hath revealed therein. If any do fail to judge by the light of what Allah hath revealed, they are no better than those who rebel. So what it's actually commanding us to do, what it's telling us to do, is to judge by what we actually have. So it's talking about the gospel there. And so it's telling us to judge, evaluate the Quranic revelation by what we actually have in our possession, which is the Bible.
Why would it do that? I think there's a lot of Christians who would think, and it might be a misconception, that the Quran itself is its own unique Bible and it has its own God, so there's no connection. But what you're saying there...
No, because Muhammad himself actually thought and considered himself to be in a long line of prophets. That's why part of the foundational teaching of Islam is that they believe the prophets. Okay. And so when Muhammad himself, who considered himself to be a prophet, went around speaking to the Jews and the Christians in particular, he always challenged them, have a look for yourselves at the Torah, have a look for yourselves at the Injil, and see that what I'm not saying is true. So his challenge to Christians and to Jews was to judge him and judge what he had to say by the Bible, by the text of the Bible.
Wow. And so the Quran is saying, go to the scriptures, and that's referring to the Injil specifically.
To the Injil, which is what we call our New Testament.
Okay.
And because he's referring to a written text, and Christians have no other text than the New Testament, which is what Arabs actually still today call the Injil. So my father, who's an Arab, when he refers to the New Testament, he often calls it the Injil. That's what Arabs often call it.
So let me ask you, you read the text from the Quran. Did you take the challenge up?
I did. I took the challenge up, and I found a number of things in it that I discovered that I could agree with in the Bible. That for example, we could agree that there is only one God. Lots of Muslims think that we don't, but we do. We agree that there is only one God. We just think that he's more complex than what they are willing to grant. We also refute idolatry in any shape or form. We think there are angels. We also believe that there is a judgment day at the end of the day, and that people will be sent either to heaven or to hell. All these things that we could agree with. And there's lots of other things like the values and some commands that are given that will actually, that we could agree on, like loving and not stealing and all that kind of stuff. But I've got to say that there were also a number of problems that I had with it. And there were 4 major problems that I in particular had with the Quran's material compared to what the Bible actually has to say.
Please go through some of them.
First one is the Quran denies that Jesus is God, whereas the Bible makes that claim very clearly. John 1, verse 1, in the beginning was the Word, talking about Jesus. The Word was with God and the Word was God. Very clear statements of divinity in the Bible. Secondly, the Quran claims that Jesus didn't die on the cross, whereas the Bible claims very clearly that Jesus did die on the cross. And in fact, for Christians, we say that it's of first importance. And if you actually take the fact that Jesus died out of the cross from the Injil itself, you're left with no Injil, you're left with no gospel. It's so fundamental. In fact, we've developed a word in English that comes from the word crucifixion, which means we talk about the crux, or we talk about something that's being crucial, which means that it's essential.
That's
to
right.
it, because the cross, the crucifixion of Jesus, the crux upon which Jesus died, that is essential to Christianity. Without it, there's no Christianity. So to deny the cross is to deny Christianity altogether. The third problem is that the Quran claims that Muhammad himself is predicted in the pages of the Torah and in the pages of the Gospel. So in Surah 7, Ayah 157, those who follow the messenger, the unlettered prophet, whom they find mentioned in their own scriptures, in the law and the gospel. But the problem, we don't find Muhammad in the law or the gospel. We simply just don't find him. And the fourth really big problem that I find...
Sorry, I heard you say they're unlettered?
Yes, because Muhammad, well, there's a big contention over what that means, but it's referring to Muhammad, which Muslims take was unlettered, that is, he didn't know how to read or write.
Okay.
But it can actually literally mean that he didn't have a book with him. There was no book, there was no revelation that was given to him.
So there are 2 schools of thought,
Two
pretty
schools
much.
of thought on
But
that.
what it's the message of that ayah that you just read is it's saying that we should be able to find the Prophet Muhammad in the Bible or in the Injil.
That's right.
Okay.
That's exactly right. But we don't find him.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and that's a big problem, I think, for Muslims, and they have a solution for that, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. The fourth really big problem that I found is, and I want to cover this in the next time that we look at this subject again, because I really think it's worth investigating, and it's this, is there is a storyline to the Bible, and there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and the storyline is weaving a particular end in mind, and we don't really find that Muhammad and the Quran actually fits into that storyline at all. And so even though he says that he's in the long line of prophets, it's almost like you're going in this direction, and then suddenly what Muhammad and the Quran actually have to say are over here.
Okay.
And he wants to say that it's in agreement with this, and I'm saying no, it's actually not even going anywhere near, it's not even the same ballpark.
So it's almost like, if I could use an illustration, it's almost like a painting that's been painted, and you could see how every stroke and every, image fits together, but as soon as you come to the Quran and you read that, it just doesn't seem to fit in with that painting or that picture.
It doesn't. It's not in the picture.
Uh-huh.
It's a picture of something completely different.
And those 4 things that you mentioned, so could you just say those one more time?
So the fact that
the crucifixion was, I think, the last one.
The crucifixion was the last one. The fact that it denies Jesus' divinity.
Uh-huh.
It denies the crucifixion of Jesus. It talks about the fact that Muhammad ought to be in the Bible, but we don't find him in the Bible. And the last one is the fact that he just simply doesn't fit into the storyline, the overall story of the Bible, which most people are unaware of, and that's what I really want to explore next time. Yeah.
Now, are there any claims that are made or historical evidence with regard to some of the things that Muslims do say? Like, I know that there's one big thing, and usually as soon as you speak to a Muslim, this is one of the prominent things that comes up, is that what you have actually has been changed or manipulated.
Yes, that's right. That's the classic argument they present, and they particularly present it because they can't find for themselves evidence of Muhammad, I think, in the Bible. Okay. And so that's why they say, oh yes, but that's because you've changed it, you've corrupted it. But I want to say that there's just simply no evidence for this. Actually, most Muslims want to claim that the Quran says that Christians and Jews have corrupted and changed the Bible, and they look at verses like Surah 2, Ayah 75, which says, "Can ye, O men of faith, entertain the hope that they will believe in you?" It's talking about Christians and Jews. In particular, it's talking about Jews there. "Seeing that a party of them heard the word of Allah and perverted it knowingly after they understood it." And there are lots of other verses that speak similar things. But the big question is whether this means that the actual text has been changed, or whether the people there have deliberately distorted the message of the text and communicated it wrongly.
Okay.
And there are a couple of schools of thought, but I'm saying that those schools of thought appear within Islam itself, not Christians, but within Islam itself. That is, prominent thinkers of the past, people like Razi, for example, who was 800 years ago, a very famous and big thinker, a Muslim thinker, who wrote a tafsir on the Quran. He basically says that it's unlikely there that the Quran is speaking about the text of the scriptures, of the Injil or the Torah, because for him it was impossible to think that God would allow his word to be changed. And secondly, he actually looked at the overwhelming evidence, historical evidence there for this, and saw that really there is no evidence to suggest that Christians have ever changed it or Jews have ever changed it.
So usually the claims are one of two things. Either one, that the text itself has been changed, its words have been taken out, things have been added, and so on, which is really a form of vandalism.
Yes.
Or the meaning has been changed. So in other words, it says one thing, but now this person has changed the meaning.
That's
and,
right.
and gone and done what's not really in there.
That's it. That's
okay.
it. And I think I can clearly see evidence of that in the Quran. I can't see any evidence personally when I read the Quran. I don't think it's actually talking about changing the text of the Bible.
I mean, what would that say about God?
Well, I think it says a lot about God, and it says that he's either weak or he's allowed his message to be distorted by people. But there's one other thing that it talks about, and it says about God, and it's this: if we believe the Quran, if I believe the Quran, then what it's actually saying is God himself is being deliberately deceptive to Christians and to Jews. Why? Because he's actually asking them to look at, in that particular text that I told you about, to go back to a text to either confirm the Quran, to see that what Muhammad is saying is true, but knowingly saying that when the text of the Bible has been changed.
And that wouldn't be right.
And that wouldn't be right.
That's right.
But what we find is that the Quran itself challenges Christians and Jews to look at the text of the Quran, of the Bible. It's not just saying go back to the originals if you can, which you couldn't anyway. That's what
right.
Muslims would say nowadays. No, it's actually saying to go back to the text. And in fact, it's telling the Christians and the Jews on the day of Muhammad that look at the books in your possession. So in Surah 2 verse 89 it says, and when there comes to them a book from Allah confirming what is with them. So he's not talking about the revelations that they got in the past, but the revelations they actually have in their hands.
Wow.
The Arabic is actually talking about what's in your hands. So this book, the scriptures they had was in their hands, in their possession. So the Quran itself is pointing Christians and Jews to look at what's in their hand. That's talking about the 7th century AD. We today have Bibles from
before
the
that.
4th century and the
That's
3rd
right.
century AD. So from before that. And all of the Bibles agree.
Exactly.
So clearly what the Quran is pointing to is the Bible that we have today.
We have, that's right.
Yeah.
And another thing is that why would God do such a thing? He wouldn't deceive us. I mean, even the scriptures, the prophets, and I'm talking here specifically the prophet of Isaiah, we read in the Old Testament, God says, come let us reason together.
That's right.
He wants us to use our mental faculty. He wants us to come and use our brain, and not so much to critique, but to think about those things which he says are true and to test them.
Yeah, that's right. And he also says that he won't allow his word to be corrupted until it returns and does what it's set out to do. So we find that either we accept what the Bible has to say and we go with that, or we have this difficult conundrum now of actually agreeing with the Quran, doing what it says, but being deceived by God. Because that's the ultimate point. Whichever way you look at it, it's got to be the end point, that God is being deceptive, because he's either telling us to look at what we have in our hands and that's corrupted, so he's actually trying to deliberately deceive us into saying, well, look, I don't find it, therefore there's no way I'm ever going to accept that, even though it's true. So it's hard to believe someone who's being deceptive, that they're speaking the truth. So why would I accept it at all? Do you know what I mean?
That's right. So I'm sure that now Muslims will be watching this show and they'd be listening and they're saying, no, I'm going to read the Bible. I know that ayah, I know that verse. I'm going to go to the Bible and I'm going to try and find Muhammad in the Injil.
Yeah.
Now, are we able to do that? Are we able to do the same test, on the Injil and try and find the prophet there?
We do that. We can do that, and you will come across the same problem. We won't find Muhammad in it. The big question we want to ask, for the sake of consistency, is can we do the same test on the Gospel as we do on the Quran? Does the Gospel line up with the Old Testament scriptures, the scriptures that came before it? Because it's no good attacking the Quran on that point and then having the Gospel and it doesn't pass the test either. And I want to say that this is the best piece of evidence that I have for what I'm talking about today, is that when we go to the Gospel, when we go to the New Testament, what we see is Jesus and the apostles constantly going back to the Jews and saying, let us use the scriptures together. Let us reason together, as you said in Isaiah. And they go back to the prophets. They go back to the Torah. And they show from the Torah, they show from the prophets that Jesus is the Messiah. That the Messiah, when he comes, would die on the cross. The Messiah, when he comes, would bear the penalty for sin in his own person, as he dies in exchange of the sins of the world. And the Messiah would, 3 days later, rise from the dead. That's what Jesus taught himself. It's what the apostles taught. And it's what the early Christians did with the Jews. So every time that the Christians tried to persuade the Jews, what did they do? They went back to their scriptures. They didn't say, come and look at the New Testament, come and look at the Injil, and see that what we're saying is true. They went back to the
Torah,
prophets, the Torah, and they showed from there that it was. See, I was talking to a Muslim just recently, and he was shocked to find that the Bible consisted of the Jewish scriptures as well as the Christian Injil.
Wow!
And I said to him, yes, of course. We read the prophets. We believe in the prophets. And it's the same prophets and Torah that the Jews have. And it was even more shocking to him. And I said to him this: if Christians wanted to change the Bible, they would have changed it so that it would be different to the Jews, surely. And
Yes.
if Jews wanted to change the prophets and the Torah, then the main people they've got a problem with is the Christians. And surely they would have tried to take out any reference to Jesus in this. So they would have taken and changed those. But we don't. We have the same Bible, the same Old Testament prophets.
Do you find that Muslims are willing to go to the Bible and read it?
Some are. I think when I've pointed out to a number of them they have actually started reading the Bible. And that's all I can do, is encourage people to read the Bible for themselves. The Quran expects people to know the Bible. It tells Muslims to believe the prophets. But what I keep on telling Muslims is you don't. You don't even read them. You don't even give them a chance. You dismiss them out of hand because of a pre-statement that you've made that they've been corrupted, when there is no evidence to suggest it, and there's no evidence in the Quran to suggest it. And I just keep on telling them, read it, and you'll discover for yourself that the Bible speaks a message of a God who is love, and a God who has done something for them. Not a God who just expects them to follow his will, but a God who's done something. He sent his Son into the world to die on the cross so that they could be forgiven and be given heaven on a plate. They don't have to work for it anymore.
Wow.
You'll discover this incredible message for yourself if you read the Bible for yourself. And that's what I urge all Muslims to do.
Pastor Moussa, thank you once again for coming and sharing some of your insights with us. I'm sure that these things are something which they're so important to you. And you can't help it, but you want to share this with Muslims, with Christians, with whoever else who hasn't made Jesus a follower. And if you are a Christian, you should know these things as well.
That's
Is that right?
That's right. Oh, that's what I teach every Sunday.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To our viewers, I really pray and hope that you found this episode to be immensely challenging. You've heard it said, you've been able to perhaps read these things for yourself. Now you need to go and consider and think and really ask yourself that wonderful question, is what I'm doing or who I'm following, is he the right person? And we know and we trust that God will guide you. The true God will guide you into all light and understanding. And until then, please stay tuned for the very next episode of Worlds Apart. Goodbye.